Welcome to another episode of the Spurs Takeover. I'm your host, Joe Garcia, and we're going to be joined by our co host. You know him, you love him, the lovely Benjamin Bornstein of Project Spurs. Ben, it's been quite some time, man. You've been hooping it up at the rec or what?
Yeah, hooping it up, going to way too many overtime games, and screwing up my Spurs watching schedule. So, don't terribly appreciate that. But you know what? We can't all win, much like the Spurs.
Yeah.
So,
How have
you
you
know,
been? Has your team been playing better than the Spurs?
not by much. We we did win on Sunday though, so that was nice.
Well, there you go. Well, unfortunately for the Spurs, they are in dire straits right now. They have lost to the Chicago Bulls tonight by a final score of 110 to 109. They are now 20 and 26 on the season. I believe they were in the 10th spot in the West now. And I'm probably pretty sure that they're going to either stand pat or they might move up or down depending on if the Pelicans win or not, you know?
Great.
So there we go. We have to depend on the Pelicans, and then the schedule doesn't get easier for them. This game should have been a game that they win. They're in the fourth quarter. They're up by 11, and then all of a sudden, that Spurs inconsistency on the defensive front shows up. Then they start. I don't know. They wake up, and you have Derek White say, "I had enough. I'm going to go ahead and put the team on my back, and I'm going to, play decent defense." He had the 8-second call on Zach LaVine to stand his ground. Then after that, he went ahead and had another great defensive stance near the end of the fourth quarter. But still, it wasn't enough because we had DeMar DeRozan go to the free throw line. He hits one of two, time expires, and that's all she wrote. Spurs lose by a final score of 110 to 109. Spurs fans, in particular, you have some of the Spurs faithful there that say they're not going to stand for any DeMar DeRozan slander. And honestly, at the end of the day, win or lose, it doesn't fall under one man. It falls under the team. Yes, he missed the free throws, but you had an 11-point lead going into the fourth quarter. You just couldn't get it done on the defensive end. You couldn't get stops. You let the Bulls go on, I think, a 17-5 run there at a certain juncture in the fourth quarter. And those are inexcusable atrocities that the Spurs have been committing all season, Ben. So that's enough of me. What was your take on tonight's game?
So the Spurs give up 35 points in the fourth quarter. Up to that point, they hadn't given up any quarter with 30 points. I mean, fourth quarter this is clearly a young team that has no idea how to close games, and that's the most frustrating part because they build these leads, but they can't keep them. And you had two starters tonight who were frankly atrocious. DeJounte Murray played horrible. 2 points in 22 minutes on 1 of 4 shooting. He only got 4 shots over the course of the entire game. That doesn't make sense to me. He didn't even get to the rim enough to get more shots than that. He had 3 rebounds, 4 assists, 1 turnover. The 4-to-1 assist to turnover ratio is good, but he has to do more than that. And Bryn Forbes, 1 of 5. I have never known Bryn Forbes to only take 5 shots in a game. Something is seriously wrong with that. He had 5 assists, 2 rebounds, 2 points, and even when he's not hitting his shot, he shoots way more than 5 shots a game. That's insane. That doesn't make any sense. Jakob Poeltl playing for an injured LaMarcus Aldridge, starting for him, 7 of 12 from the field, 16 points, 13 rebounds, 1 assist, 3 blocks, but 2 of 8 from the free throw line. There was the Jakob Poeltl strategy going on late in that game, and that's kind of what killed the Spurs too. He couldn't make his free throws, and a lot of people want to point to DeMar DeRozan missing that last one at the end, and yeah, he probably should have made that, but he was still 14 of 17 from the free throw line. He was 11 of 21 from the field. He's shooting better than 50% from the field, and whatever that is, 80+% from the free throw line. There were other opportunities in this game to win it, and frankly, the team just didn't want to win it. I mean, DeMar DeRozan went out there and did everything he could. He got this team within striking distance. He gave them a chance to win the game, and they just didn't do enough. I mean, Patty Mills, 25 points off the bench. That's your best case scenario. You get a guy like him that goes on fire one night. Everybody else has to do something. They have to take the pressure off DeMar DeRozan. They have to help everybody else in this lineup. The way some of these guys played tonight just didn't make any sense. And there were some people who thought Chimezie Metu had a really nice run in this game, and I thought he
I
got some
thought he did.
decent run. Yeah, he probably should have had a few more minutes. I wouldn't argue that. He had a nice block. He had 3 rebounds, 4 points. In 11 minutes, that's pretty good. And in 11 minutes, he got up 5 shots. In twice as many minutes as that, DeJounte Murray only got up 4. That's the part that baffles me the most.
DeJounte Murray played 22 minutes and had only 2 points for the game.
There's no reason for that, ever. Ever. I'm not saying he has to score double digits every game, but he has to make more of an impact than that. If he doesn't have double digit assist numbers, then what are you doing on the floor? If you're not going to score at all and you're not really going to facilitate, what are you doing on the floor? What's the point? And with Bryn Forbes, we know why he's on the floor. He's on the floor to make shots, and he wasn't doing that tonight. He wasn't even attempting shots tonight, which again makes no sense for a guy that Popovich wants to have on the floor and wants to start and wants to shoot the ball. Taking only 5 shots from the field just makes no sense. So there are a lot of things that have to get figured out. And I think if the Spurs have LaMarcus Aldridge in that game, they probably win it, and they probably win it handily because he's a load for a Lauri Markkanen or someone else to handle that. Those guys don't really have anyone to worry about on the rest of this roster. Lauri Markkanen isn't really playing defense on Jakob Poeltl. Poeltl's getting a lot of cleanup buckets and a lot of alley-oops and rim runs and things like that. Whereas, if you're LaMarcus Aldridge, if he's playing D on LaMarcus Aldridge, he has to actually worry about Aldridge in the post outside shooting threes and getting to his spot on the elbows or in the mid-range and hitting those. He doesn't have to worry about that with Poeltl, and he can help more. And I think that's a big deal people don't really think about when LaMarcus Aldridge misses a game like this. So there were a lot of factors that were just not in the Spurs' favor, and I think the move has to be made at the trade deadline. They have to. I'm not saying blow it up, not by any means, but they have to do something. They have to get a spark. They need maybe someone off the bench who's a microwave kind of guy.
They need to be the spark that lights the fire that starts the resistance.
Yes, 100%. Yes.
This game played very much like a bad Star Wars movie, man. It's like we're in the new trilogy and we're rewatching it all over again. It's like the Rise of Skywalker, that last Star Wars movie that just came out. It had its moments, but at the end of the day,
very predictable.
Yeah, very predictable, and it leaves you wanting more. And it's wasn't very good. It was kind of meh, which is very much on par with the way the Spurs season has gone. It's been meh because of the defense.
Much like that trilogy, the ending left you with more questions than answers.
Exactly, and just going down the stat sheet right now, you have DeMar DeRozan had 36 points on the night, as you mentioned, 36 minutes. So it means he was averaging a point a minute. You had Jakob Poeltl, 36 minutes, 16 points, 13 rebounds. He had 3 blocks. He had 1 assist, so he had a decent game. Unfortunately, he was a liability when it came to free throw shooting.
Right.
He needs to clean that up and work on that aspect of his game in the offseason, but I think he's been much more improved this season versus his game in the prior season. Trey Lyles, 26 minutes, he had 10 points. Anytime you get any extra production out of Trey Lyles on the offensive end, it's a plus. He's usually out there primarily for defense and to crash the boards. So anything you get off of him as far as production on the offensive end, as I stated, is a plus. You have DeJounte Murray, unfortunately, who was lackluster in this game. 22 minutes, 2 points. I get, that your heart might not be in the game given the events that occurred with Kobe, and I understand that, so I'm still thinking that maybe there's some lingering effects there from a mental aspect, that is still affecting some of these players. But, you got a job and you got to come out and do it. That's the reality of being an NBA player, so they got to keep moving on.
You have to play through it, but you're a young player who's athletic, who's the point guard of this team. I'm going to keep harping on this. There's no way you should be taking only 4 shots in the game. I understand wanting to get teammates involved, and DeMar DeRozan was a hot hand, so you got to feed him. But You have to create. DeJounte Murray, you are in the lineup to create and to get to the rim. And if you're not gonna get to the rim and maybe give a kick out, then you have to finish at the rim. You have to do something. Even even a missed shot at the rim is better than nothing because you almost always have Pirtle following you for a putback.
But here's
That's
the real issue,
basically an
though,
assist.
with DeJounte. DeJounte's he's quick, he's athletic, he plays great defense. He's not very creative when it comes to the distribution of the ball. That part of his game is lacking. And it's a part of the game that we need him for because he is our starting point guard. It's his job to distribute the ball. It's his job to have that court vision and really be the engine behind this offense as far as dictating the tempo of the game itself. And unfortunately, he hasn't done a very good job of that. I mean, he's been very inconsistent this season, and to me, it bewilders me as to why he's allowed to continue to be the starting point guard for the San Antonio Spurs. I think at this juncture, you need to take him out of the starting lineup, and not just him. Bryn Forbes, get this man out of the starting lineup. Once again, 22 minutes, 2 points. That's not going to cut it. He needs to get yanked. Both of these guys, I think, need to get yanked. It's time to insert Derek White, I think, into that starting lineup. Bryn Forbes isn't cutting it. My next pick for another shooting guard or somebody that can play a little bit better on the defensive end and give us some better production maybe on the offensive end, why not try Lonnie out? What do you got to lose? You got to ball out, in other words, with your young guns, cuz really what's going on right now, your vets aren't cutting the mustard, man. The vets aren't being consistent. And then when you have this lineup, when you have the younger players in the mix out there, and they're able to run up and down the court, it's exciting to watch. And not only that, but they seem to be more efficient from an offensive and defensive perspective. I think Coach Pop is going to have to just, if he wants to save the season, ball out with your young guns, man. You ain't got nothing else to lose.
You throw them in there with DeMar DeRozan and you let them play. You have to hope that you get long rebounds, you get live ball turnovers, whatever it is. Get them out in transition, get them running, let them, if they're going to make mistakes in the open court and transition, that's fine. You let them do that, but you live with that because a lot of times you're going to get an easy bucket out of it, and the Spurs need easy manufactured buckets, which they just don't get now. They play a very inefficient form of offense. They don't move as well as they should.
Yeah, they don't have a lot of movement to their offense. I've seen that. No screens being set. Everybody standing behind the arc, and they're not doing a lot of pick and rolls. They're not doing a lot of pick and pops. When you do see that, though, Ben, you see it a lot between Derek White and Jakob Portal. That pick and pop action is very good, and I think they need to do that or need to go to that play more often.
I don't understand why you don't put Jakob Pertl in a pick and roll almost every time down the floor and make his defender make a decision. And then that way you either throw it up to him on the alley oop, you find him, on a delayed rim run, or you get the mismatch and you go. I mean, it's just if you run the pick and roll properly, it is near unstoppable. And with the right personnel, it makes it even better. And so I don't understand why they don't do that. I mean, even DeRozan and Pearl doing it together would be interesting to me. I think they could make it work, but it's just a lot of times they feed it into LaMarcus Aldridge down there, or even they feed it into DeRozan in the post and say, okay, go to work. And a lot of times that doesn't work. You have guys standing around, they're watching them. It's not good offense. You have to move. I'm not saying this team can be like the 2014 Spurs. They don't have the same kind of personnel. They just don't. But you have to bring some factors or some tenets from that team, from those philosophies, and apply them here. There has to be movement. That is the basis of basketball.
That it is. And we had some fans too that were clamoring and they're kind of going back and forth with each other, especially on Spurs Twitter. You had the Spurs faithful who were saying they don't want any slander being given to DeMar DeRozan. And you know what? Rightfully so. It's not all his fault though. When you win or lose, you win or lose as a team. You can't just blame one man for losing the game. DeMar DeRozan had an opportunity for the Spurs, but realistically, they shouldn't even have been in that situation because they were up by 11 to start the fourth quarter. So it's not his fault that the Spurs lost. It's the team's
Exactly.
fault that they lost. They played very poor defense. They made poor decisions, and they
And this
continue to do so.
and this team has been a bad defensive team. Nothing has really changed about them in that regard. You know what you're getting with a lot of these guys. You have maybe three or four guys on this team who are going to play hard defensively every single possession. That's Pirtle, Derek White, Lonnie Walker, and DeJounte Murray. Everybody else, I mean, and we haven't seen enough from Chimezie Metu to make a to pass judgment on that. But for the most part, everybody else just like, they got by me. I can't do anything. Oh well, Pirtle will help me, and then he passes to Pirtle's man who is now wide open, and they get a layup or dunk out of it. So it's yeah, it's some of it is some guys have to take more pride in playing defense. Some of it is some guys are just not good defensive players, and that's the reality we have to live with. And some of it is, some guys need to get jettisoned, traded, released after the season, and the Spurs need to bring in some guys who are going to be high energy defenders and they're going to get after it
Yeah, they
on
need
that
to
end of
have a
the
long
floor.
look in the mirror, man, and see what the product that's out there on the court, the personnel out there. It's not passing the smell test. It's not passing the seeing eye test. We all know that
No.
that's not Spurs basketball, and it's not going to get any better as you stated unless they make some moves. But unfortunately, the trade deadline's coming up, and they will probably just stand pat, and we're going to roll with the current team that we have right now. And Pop is going to live or die with the personnel that he has right now. So even though Spurs fans want change, like you're saying, it's very doubtful. It's highly doubtful that anything will happen. And you can attribute that to poor decision making. We're still paying Paul Gasol $5 million this season. He's not even playing with the team. We have
Yeah.
Damari Carroll, signed up. I believe next season we owe him something like $14 million. It's ridiculous. When I was looking at the Spurs payroll, we have LaMarcus Aldridge all but guaranteed next season. His contract fully guaranteed. They haven't made an offer to DeMar DeRozan yet, so he's probably more than likely going to hit free agency, and we're going to have to pay a premium if we want to keep him.
Well,
So
he is DeMar DeRozan has the opt-in. He
he
has a player
does.
option for
He
next season.
does. And then more than
Yeah.
likely he's going to go and opt out because he's going to want to test the waters. I mean,
Yeah, he's gonna see if he can try and get more money, but I don't think the market is there for it. So I
yeah,
guess we'll see who wins out here.
yeah. It's going to be a bluff, kind of like poker. Let's see who's going to,
Mm.
flinch
We're
first.
gonna we're gonna see some contract chicken going on.
Exactly. That's what's going to happen. But it's just poor decision making that they've made. I mean, what it boils down to is right now the Spurs don't have the cash to really go after somebody of the
Mm.
caliber of player that the Spurs fans are wanting, and the Spurs know that they can't go after a perennial all-star right now because they just don't have the money. They don't have the funds to do so, and we're not probably not going to be able to go after anybody worth a darn until 2 seasons from now. When Patty's contract comes off, and then finally LaMarcus Aldridge contract will expire. You know, we're gonna have to roll with what we have right now, and really, in about 2 or 3 seasons, we have to look at the G League because those young guys that we have out there right now are currently in development, and the young guys that we have on the team right now will then be the savvy veterans in Derek White, DeJounte Murray, Lonnie Walker, Jakob Portal. So that's our future. If we mix the guys that we have now, which will only get better with the young guns that we have in the G League that are getting that much needed experience, good things can happen when you combine those two forces together, but it's yet to be seen because we don't really know what the future holds. We're just kind of guesstimating at this point. But a lot of
Right.
the comments that I'm reading right now from everybody who's watching us out here on Facebook, especially, everybody's saying the same thing. It's hard to watch the games. People don't want to watch them anymore. Look what's happening to the Spurs. This isn't Spurs basketball. They want change. I mean, you all are preaching to the choir. We all want that. But I think at this juncture, we're just going to have to be patient, and we're just going to have to roll with the team that we have and see how the season unfolds, and realistically, at the end of the day, Ben, I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna keep it real for all the peeps out there. Why in the hell would you want this team to make the playoffs? Why would you
Right.
want them to even get that eighth seed? Because you know what's going to happen. They're probably going to be either swept or they might have the gentleman sweep where they win one game and they're out 4-1, bounced again in the first round of the playoffs. This team, as it's currently constructed, is not a playoff team. If they're having trouble even beating lesser teams in the East, such as the Bulls, who came in with a record of 19-30, the Spurs had one game on them. You know, at 20 games for the season. The Spurs right now, when I look at the numbers, Ben, they
Mhm.
could only lose 15 games. Now, I think that number has dwindled to 13. If they lose 13 more games, it's game over because you're not going to get to that magic number which I had at 43 wins for the season. So every game that they drop, it's almost like that nail in the coffin. Statistically, there's only so many games to be played, and if
Mhm.
you lose more than 13, you might as well just start calling your travel agent because you're all but done. You know?
Well, here's the issue I have. I think the Spurs staff has to know that this is not a playoff team that is on the roster
Oh yeah.
currently. If you know that and you're going to drop games, you might as well drop games with DeJounte Murray, Derek White, and Lonnie Walker playing more minutes than they did tonight.
Yep.
Give them and yes, you're going to have to play DeMar DeRozan and you're going to have to play LaMarcus Aldridge because frankly, you may need those guys as trade bait, so you need to make sure they are on the floor and keeping their value. I understand that. So you have to find your balance and you have to give those guys minutes. Maybe you don't give Bryn Forbes minutes. Marco Bellinelli, DNP-CD, every single game. DNP him all day, every day. All right. You got to play your young guys. You have to see what they can do. You have to see what you have, and you have to see, okay, what are we really going to need in this draft? Because we are now going to have a lottery pick. We're going to have a shot at a pretty good player, even in this weak, what is perceived to be a weak draft class. So at some point, you have to say, okay, you know what? Let's not win games. It's too late to go full take. You're not going to get the first pick, but at least try and put yourselves closer to the top 10 and get yourself in there and see what you can do, because then you give yourself a shot at a more of a surefire pick. You give yourself a shot at an Obi Toppin or to Jaden McDaniels or a Denny Avdija out of Maccabi Tel Aviv or an Onyeka Okongwu. Depending on what mock you look at, he's either a top 10 or some sort of lottery pick. So, depending on what mock draft you look at, the Spurs may be able to get him now, or they may need to lose some more games. But either way, yes, you want to try and be competitive. You don't want to. If you're the Spurs organization, you don't want to openly tank. I understand that. It's a bad look. It's bad optics. So you need to go out there and you need to say, you know what? We just wanted to get our young guys more play. We want to see what we have. We want to see what we have going in the future. Those are the guys who are signed for years to come on cheap contracts, no less. You can always get rid of guys after 2 or 3 years if they don't pan out, and then you have other dudes coming in through the draft. And if you get rid of those other guys on those smaller contracts, it adds up, especially after the next 2 or 3 years when all of the big contracts are gone, and your biggest contract is going to be DeJounte Murray, who's got a 4-year, $64 million deal, which really is not that much, and will be considered even less once the salary cap takes its bump the next few years. So
Yeah.
the Spurs have to go out and they have to attract someone. That's the biggest issue. They have to draft well, and two, they have to sign a free agent.
Yeah.
The last big free agent they got was LaMarcus Aldridge, and even then, he was still past his prime. So they got to find a guy who fits with this team, who just wants to win and isn't necessarily a guy who needs the spotlight.
Yes. Sergio Lozano said, "See ya, Forbes," and Frank Ramirez says, "I have a feeling Pop is going to really think this summer about coming back." I don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. That's the scary part. There's a lot of uncertainty. We don't know what he's thinking or what he's going through from a personal perspective. Uh, that'll either make him want to come back or just call it quits. We don't know, you know. So I just see it as this: anytime we have Coach Pop out there on the court with us, I'm gonna enjoy it because it's gonna be much like the Timmy and Timmy, losing Tony, losing Manu. We love them to death, and we took them for granted when they were out there playing, and now that they're not out there on the court anymore, we're seeing the product that has unfolded before our eyes, and we're not liking it. So count your blessings. You know, you might feel a certain way about Coach Pop, but he is going to go into the Basketball Hall of Fame as one of the greatest coaches in all of the NBA. You know, so I have nothing but respect for him and high admiration for everything he's done for the team. But you know, we do need to start looking to see what we're going to do for our future. You know, this is not looking good for us, and unfortunately, I don't see the team getting much better. And you know what? As bad as things are right now, they're about to get worse because you know what's looming in about maybe what 3 games now. We got the rodeo road trip coming up. It starts February the 3rd, and it's not looking good. And not only that, but the next game that the Spurs are going to play is going to be against the Utah Jazz. Utah is number 2 in the West, and they are looking like a formidable opponent. I don't think this is going to end well for the Spurs. I think this is going to be a nasty blowout. And if the Spurs get up for this game and they manage to beat the Utah Jazz, excuse me, begs the question, why haven't they played like that consistently throughout the year? They get up for the better teams in the West and they're competitive. They were able to beat the Milwaukee Bucks, but yet they can't get up for the lesser teams that they should just mow down. They struggle. They
And
go into overtime.
it makes no sense at all.
It doesn't, you know. So we don't know. The Spurs right now are Jekyll or Hyde, and unfortunately, it's very frustrating to watch. And I was at the game on Friday when they were playing against the Suns, and that was a frustrating game to watch because I had a good view of the court, and I could see the offensive plays that they were running. And I got to tell you, they ran the same offensive play 4 to 5 times in a row, and the spacing was horrible out there against the Suns. The offensive spacing, it was it was horrible. They were getting in each other's way. They were crowding the lanes. They couldn't pass the ball. They had a lot of turnovers, and it's because they were all bunched together. Why they did that, I have no idea. And it looked like even the coaching staff was upset because they were getting mad at them as the players would come out when they would call a timeout or there was a break in the game. Coach Pop was immediately getting upset at his players, and you could see, Coach Becky and Coach Timmy too. They were all frustrated because they didn't understand why they kept doing that. So again, we don't know really what's going on out there on the court, but something's happening, and it needs to change. And unfortunately, it's not. And there's no easy fix to this. So we're just gonna have to roll with the team, and it's gonna be one of those seasons that's just gonna be a wash, much like the season when David Robinson was injured and we brought in Dominique Wilkins, to the team. I'm sure you remember that.
Those were good times.
Those were good
Well,
times.
they weren't great times, but to claim Dominique Wilkins as a Spur is always fun for me.
And he balled out that season too. He was fun to watch.
Human highlight reel, man. Everywhere he went.
Yeah. So we'll go ahead and end it there. And before we end this Spurs takeover for the night, where can the peeps get a hold of you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at @the_Boomstein, writing stuff for Project Spurs all the time. I'm actually going to have an article coming out tomorrow, Tuesday, on another Spurs prospect watch. So keep an eye out for that. Should be good. Should be fun. I'm going to have those as the season goes on, of course. And if the Spurs do what I suggest, I'll be able to write about some potential top 10 picks, which would be really fun.
There you go. So make sure you go ahead and follow Ben out there on social media. And you can follow me, at Two Shots Podcast. And if you want to see where you can follow us across all our social media platforms, just go to twoshotspodcast.com. And we'll be able to point you to all our social media platforms, all our handles, and more importantly, you can see all the videos that we have out there on our website, including the replay of the Spurs takeover. And also make sure you check out all the great articles that are out there by our friends at Project Spurs. by going to projectspurs.com, and also check out the great local sports coverage that's available to you guys at the Project Spurs Network. Yes, projectspursnetwork.com, so you can see all your local sports coverage. So for Ben Bornstein, I'm Joe Garcia. Thank you for watching another episode of the Spurs Takeover. And like we always say, spread the love, stop the hate, and be kind. We're out. Peace.